The results confirm the due date, Miss Lin. You are exactly 8 months pregnant.
The nurse had just said the word pregnant when Emily's world went silent. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Not after one reckless night she had already tried to forget. She sat on the hospital bed, hands trembling over her flat stomach, realizing that a single decision had changed the rest of her life. 3 months earlier, Emily had been celebrating her promotion with friends at a downtown bar in Chicago. She rarely drank, rarely stayed out late, and definitely didn't go home with strangers. But that night she met Daniel. Charming, confident, with a smile that made her feel seen in a way she hadn't felt in years. They talked for hours, laughed over cheap cocktails, and by midnight, she had convinced herself it was harmless to let go just once. By morning he was gone, leaving only a polite note in his first name. She never expected to see him again. Now she was alone, clutching an ultrasound printout she didn't know how to explain to anyone. Emily worked 2 jobs just to keep up with rent. Raising a child on her own felt impossible. For weeks she avoided telling anyone, hiding her nausea at work and wearing loose sweaters even as spring warmed the city. One afternoon, after nearly fainting during her shift at a cafe, her manager insisted she go to the hospital. Emily protested, but exhaustion won. As she sat in the waiting area, staring at the floor, she felt someone's presence beside her. A familiar cologne, subtle and expensive, drifted into her senses before she even looked up. Daniel stood there, dressed in a tailored suit, his expression shifting from confusion to shock as his eyes fell to her belly. It was small but noticeable now. He froze, his lips parting as if the air had been knocked out of him. "Emily," he said, his voice lower than she remembered. She swallowed, her instinct to run battling the weight of the truth. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then his gaze moved from her face to the medical bracelet on her wrist, then back to her stomach. Understanding dawned slowly, painfully. "That night," he started, his voice unsteady. "Is the baby?" She nodded, tears burning behind her eyes. She had imagined this conversation 100 times, but none of those versions included him finding out by accident in a hospital hallway. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, pacing a few steps before stopping again. "I should have left you my number," he said quietly. "I thought it was just a one-time thing. I didn't think." "Neither did I," Emily replied, her voice breaking. He sat down beside her, closer this time. "Are you okay? Have you been taking care of yourself?" The concern in his voice felt both comforting and painful. She had spent months preparing herself to raise this child alone, building emotional walls to survive. Now he was here, asking questions she hadn't allowed herself to hope anyone would ask. Daniel explained that he had been at the hospital visiting his father. As CEO of his family's tech company, his days were usually filled with board meetings and investors, not unexpected reunions in waiting rooms. But now none of that seemed to matter. He kept glancing at Emily's stomach, as if trying to process the reality in front of him. "I want to help," he said finally. "Not because I feel obligated, but because this is my responsibility too. And because I don't want you to go through this alone." Emily studied his face, searching for signs of pity or regret. Instead, she saw fear, honest human fear, and something else she hadn't expected, sincerity. Over the following weeks, Daniel kept his word. He drove her to doctor appointments, sat beside her during ultrasounds, and even learned how to cook simple meals when her morning sickness made the smell of takeout unbearable. His world of private drivers and glass-walled offices clashed awkwardly with her tiny apartment and second-hand furniture, but he never complained. Slowly, their conversations shifted from polite check-ins to long talks about childhood memories, dreams they had set aside, and the kind of parents they hoped to be. Emily realized that the man she had met at the bar was only a fragment of who Daniel truly was. And Daniel, in turn, saw the strength behind her quiet independence. Months later, when their daughter was born, Daniel stood beside Emily in the delivery room, gripping her hand as tightly as she gripped his. When the baby cried for the first time, both of them broke down in tears they had been holding in for months. Holding his daughter for the first time, Daniel whispered, "I almost missed all of this because of one careless choice." Emily, exhausted but smiling, replied, "But you didn't. You showed up." Life didn't magically become perfect after that. They argued, struggled to balance work and sleepless nights, and faced judgment from people who didn't understand their story. But they learned to face those challenges together. Years later, when their little girl asked how her parents met, Daniel and Emily exchanged a glance filled with memories of fear, uncertainty, and unexpected second chances. "We made a mistake," Daniel would say gently, "but that mistake brought us the best thing that ever happened to us." And Emily would add, "Sometimes life doesn't start with a perfect plan. Sometimes it starts with a mess, and it's what you choose to do next that turns it into something beautiful."